Oh my gosh, I am so excited today to have Mia Danielle on the podcast to share practical tools for minimalist living so we can create a home that supports our needs and enhances our lives. She's amazing. She's a YouTuber at Mia Danielle, podcast host of the Mind Your Home podcast, and author of Downsizing. And Mia, you correct me, but I think like you believe that your environment is one of your greatest assets, not just for how it looks, that's a big part of it, but also for how it makes you feel and what it allows you to do. And we met years ago. We were trying to figure out earlier. We met online, perhaps one of my mini courses, and I'm so honored to be one of her speakers at her upcoming virtual event called the Modern Mom Simple Home Reimagine Summit, and that's happening March 1st through 3rd. And it's going to be me, Mia, and like, I don't know, 15, 20 other moms who are going to be teaching simple systems and tools to create more zen in your life and reimagine what's possible for your home environment and your life. So, Mia, I am so excited to welcome you to the Mindful Pause podcast and our community. And I know they're going to receive so much wealth of information from you today. So,
I'm
thank you
so
for being
excited to be
here.
here. I'm so excited. Yes, this is going to be a great chat because even though we speak about different subjects directly, they definitely overlap. Your space is such a huge part of, being mindful and being able to really have that space to nurture yourself.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. Do you mind sharing just a little bit of your story? Because you have two teenagers and then you have a toddler. So life is wild and crazy. Can you just share a little bit about your story and then why you're passionate about minimalist living and how that's changed for you? And then we'll get into, how we can help our community too.
Yeah, of course. Well, I first started down this whole path when my oldest two, who are now 16 and 18, were toddlers. So, well, they were like 2 years and 4 years old. I had just gotten a divorce. I was leaving the state where I grew up. I grew up in Southeast Texas, a small town. It was a lot of newness and a lot of things feeling really up in the air and stressful, and my energy levels were just like peaking and crashing, and it was really a time of a lot of inner looking and emotional turmoil. And, during that time, because I was going through a divorce, I was having to make decisions about stuff, like how much of this stuff do I want to leave in storage? What do I want to take with me? What all can fit in my envoy to travel across, state lines with two toddlers in the back? And, I just remember at some point thinking that I'm not going to be able to make this work for all of us, for me and the girls, if I don't have some kind of support. We were
Mhm.
going to be going to a place where I didn't have any family, I didn't have any friends, I didn't know anybody. And I just, something came to me that my environment was going to have to play a role in this. My environment was going to have to be a space that would carry some of the weight. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so for me, this whole, minimalism or going into clutter-free living and just being super intentional and mindful about your space all came down to support.
Mhm.
I think there are a lot of different reasons that, people come into this. For many people, it's freedom. They want to be able to go travel at the drop of a dime and not have to worry about all these things. But for me, support was really the main reason. I just wanted a space that wasn't going to fall apart whenever I needed to be able to rest and recharge.
Yep. And especially having two toddlers and doing it on your own too is, I mean, two toddlers is a lot, I know, and you collect a lot of stuff. And then how does that stuff, like the physical stuff, impact your inner world
Well,
in
I
general
mean,
for
for
our audience?
yeah, in general. Well, I mean, it can in so many different ways and so many levels, right?
Hmm.
Depending on the stuff that you're surrounding yourself with, it could carry a lot of emotional weight.
Hmm.
Like for me, going through all of that stuff from a divorce, there were definitely a lot of memories, a lot of, more emotional decisions and about, well, what do I want to bring with me into my future? What's no
Mm.
longer going to be a current part of my life? But even on a more for random clutter and stuff, it can just impact your ability to focus, your ability to feel calm and centered, the anxiety that can come from being surrounded by so many different things and all
Hmm.
of those things meaning something like little parts of your identity or little parts of reminders or unfinished projects or all of this stuff that just really overtakes your mind and your emotions.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And then how can someone tell if something is of value, like it's supporting their space and it's making it enjoyable or sacred or productive versus like draining them?
A lot of it comes down to self-awareness. You
Okay.
need to know because we don't all have the same functions and flows in our space, or in our daily lives. And so a lot of it comes down to just knowing what it is that you need from your space every day. What are the things that you do intend to invest your time and energy into versus what are the things that maybe you were investing your time and energy into 5 years ago that no longer really serve a space? And if you really just let your intuition and even your body, in some senses, kind of guide what feels right in your space. When you wake up in the morning, are you feeling like you're flustered and overwhelmed? Are you feeling like you're distracted and you're having trouble with clarity of where to focus? That could be a sign that your space is not working for you. It's working, against you.
Yeah.
If you're, being distracted by messes or feeling overwhelmed by unfinished tasks, well, that's not something that a supportive home is going to be easy to navigate.
Mm. So they can tune into like awareness wise emotions, physically how they feel in their space. Are they feeling drained or energized or flowy or creative? Um, how do they, so one is the awareness aspect of it, but what is a first step in releasing the emotional weight that is carried through our physical space?
It depends on the type of item that you're looking at. So,
Okay.
if you're looking at something that is, sentimentally emotional, well, I
Mhm.
mean, first of all, I do want to be clear that you don't have to get rid of everything, obviously.
Yeah.
And there are some things that do carry emotional or sentimental value that you just have to find a way to make it work in your space. For me, we have memory boxes. So my husband and I
Oh.
share a memory box. My kids each have a memory box. And so when you have little things that come up, like, your daughter wrote you a Mother's Day card or something. You have a space for that that's dedicated so that
I
things aren't.
love that.
Yeah, I know. It's been super, super helpful. That was actually an idea of my husband's like a decade ago, and it really just stuck because it works so well. So you don't have to get rid of everything. But when you're working through some things that you feel like you're kind of being guided to let go of those things and it's still bringing a little bit of struggle, I find that it can be really helpful to first of all look at the data. Not all things that we get rid of that are a struggle are even sentimental. A lot of things are like tied to an old identity. Like,
Mm.
man, I wish I was somebody who wore high heel pumps, but I'm just not that kind of person. And so you
Yeah.
have these things that are just like held in your closet forever. And so when you have data to kind of support or not support how often you're actually using that, it can
Mhm.
just make the whole process so much easier. So one thing that I do recommend to people is something called heat mapping your belongings.
Okay.
So yeah, for even for maybe facial products or things that you would use that might be up in your medicine cabinet, if you start by pushing everything off to like the left side of the medicine cabinet, and as you use your facial serum or lotion or whatever, put it off to the right side, go back in and look like a month later what all has actually been touched, what all is on the right side. And that data can be so eye-opening and release a lot of the emotional tension that we have about just holding on to every little thing.
I love that. I was going to ask you, how do we start? Because decluttering, and depending on different phases that you're in, I love that you were talking about divorce and the emotional bonds that we have with our stuff, whether it could be, bringing back good memories or even possibly triggering, certain wounds, right? Like that. And then also in our stage of motherhood, we've got little kids and they love all that junk. They love to collect the stuff from birthday parties. So I was thinking about, the several different phases. How do we start? Because there is a lot of physical stuff. There's also a lot of emotional stuff that's carried along with that baggage. So I love that heat mapping technique. Do you have any other ways to start the decluttering process? And kind of make it more of like not just a task of something else to do again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that where you start can make a big difference.
Okay.
If you're surrounded by stuff throughout your home, in my opinion, starting on your bedroom because it's the most personal space. It's where you close your eyes at night, open your eyes in the morning, and it holds a lot of meaning to you as an individual.
Hmm.
And not only that, but you can kind of do what you want in that space. You don't have to worry about what so and so is going to think when they come over to visit because
Yeah.
you can be your most authentic self in that
Yes.
sacred space. So starting there and just going through, starting, I like to divide your room, like quarter it off. So I pretend like there's a big X in your room. And so you're not overwhelmed focusing on everything at once and you focus on one piece of the X at a time or one little triangle of the X, I guess, if you're visualizing it at a time.
That's so
And that just helps.
smart.
It just helps to break things down because if you walk into a room, you might feel overwhelmed depending on the amount of stuff that you have in there. But if
Hmm.
everything is segregated and quartered off, focus on one space, focus on, the next space, and eventually you'll get there. But I'm also just a huge fan of organic decluttering. So, a lot of people don't get started because they feel like it has to be a big overtaking. It needs to take over your weekend or your entire spring break, you know?
Yep.
Um, and really that the heat mapping is a type of organic decluttering, but in general, anytime that you're anywhere, brushing your teeth in the bathroom or making your coffee in the kitchen, you
Yeah.
could make it a habit and build the habit of just decluttering or clearing off one little space while you're standing there.
I love that idea of the mapping and just kind of using what you need to use and then looking at the different sections. What happens if there's a section that's just really like too much, like too overwhelming? So like just this is really selfish, but in our bed, I do not like our bedroom. And in one section of it is like my husband's, it's like a hoarder. It's like his trophy from, college swim. And then it's like all these like boxes from his work. And it's like, where do you put all that stuff? What do you do with it when it's like your partner's
That's a
stuff?
whole other tricky. Yeah, that's a whole other. Like I have an entire workshop just on trying to get on the same page with your partner. Yeah, it can be a lot because, well, now you don't get to make all the decisions about their stuff. Now
True.
it's two people making the decisions and they may not be on board as much as you'd like. I think that zoning can be really helpful,
Oh,
like playing zone defense. This is my zone. This is your, you can have this closet, put whatever crap you want in this closet, but don't let it breach those boundaries or whatever.
mhm.
That can be really helpful. If it's just stuff in general, maybe not necessarily somebody else's stuff, but just there's a heavy side of the room. I do like to start, when you quarter things off, start with the lightest, work your way up to the heaviest, and then you can like subtask it. Like it doesn't even have to be that, oh, I'm going to take on this whole thing. Maybe on this whole side, you have a dresser and a bookshelf and a bin. Start with just the bin, like break it
Yes.
down into even further sub chunks whenever you get to a space that just feels really heavy.
That makes it way more doable. Thank you for chunking it down into bite-sized pieces. That totally makes sense. Thank you. I'm gonna have a conversation with my hoarding husband later this night. So let's talk about energy because this is the Mindful Pause podcast. How does the energy shift when you align it with your, personal goals, the energy that you want to feel, and just overall like mental and well-being?
Your space can really be like a living vision board.
Mm.
It's the thing that you're looking at it every day. These are the things that are in your line of sight. They're reminders or things you're physically interacting with. So it can really be the most powerful vision board that you have.
Mhm.
Um, and so when you surround yourself with things that are in support of the goals that you're wanting to achieve, they're in support with the type of person that you're trying to become, and really acting like little tokens of reminders of that person and not giving conflicting information by being tokens of reminders of the person you're trying to steer away from or not become bad habits or, like things that you wish that you weren't necessarily doing. Your
Mm.
space can just really help you to mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually align with that version of yourself. The
Yeah.
same way that a vision board or affirmations or anything else that you do to help, bring yourself up to a higher level,
Mhm.
the same way that those things happen because it gives you so many, it checks off so many of the little checkpoints, the visual checkpoints, the tactile checkpoints,
Yes.
the energy and mood and inspiration that you just receive from being in an environment in general.
That makes so much sense and it resonates. And I think it'll resonate with our community here too. And just for those of you who are listening, you are a wealth of information. You have so many freebies, you have courses, you've got, so really check her out at miadanielle.com, right? That's your website.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
YouTube too, because she gives all these tips and you have so many freebies and journals and you're amazing. Um,
Thank you.
how does decision fatigue show up in our environment, in our home?
Oh, like it really is a two-sided coin.
Okay.
So our homes can cause decision fatigue by just offering too many choices, too much stuff to look through. You go to cook dinner and you've got like 10 different pans down there that now you're having to shuffle through, and it can just make things take longer and remove a lot of the clarity from any of the processes that you're already trying to
Mhm.
tend to. Um, and then on the other hand, trying to make decisions can be distracting in a cluttered environment. So it can really
Yeah.
just slow down your whole mental thought processes for other decisions you're trying to make. Like maybe you're not even looking at making decisions about your clutter, but you're trying to make life decisions or decisions about your business. Well, now that's becoming more difficult because you have a chaotic environment that's distracting you and that's keeping you away from that clarity. So, in general, just for making decisions, whether it's about your space or about other parts of your life, having a clear environment that's surrounding you just makes that process so much easier and removes some of the extra little bits of information that just don't need to be a part of the equation.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense because our world is already distracting us from being present, right? And it pulls us from being more clear, having more focus. It just steals our focus, right? From what matters most. And so your environment is the space that you're in most, right? So how do we start with that? Like if we're in an environment like the kitchen, for example, and we do suffer from this decision fatigue of like, oh, what do we make for dinner? Or like, how do we start? Or what do I need to do next? Because I know for me, our mind is always somewhere else other than here. It's like in the future of planning or worrying or what ifs, especially as moms, or it's in the past of the rumination. So how do we stay more present using our environment? Maybe a couple tips for our audience.
Sure. I think that, first of all, I'm a huge fan of things like listing and journaling, getting
Okay.
things out of your head, writing down the data, and seeing, even on a more practical stance of how often am I using this thing? What types of meals do I actually make in my household? And what would
Mhm.
I really need to go along with those meals? Because it's kind of like you might use all 10 of your pans, but you might not need to use all 10 of your pans, right? Like, could you
Right.
get away with using four or five and have the four or five that really work best with all of the meals that you're actually making at your home? Are there a few that you're always digging for because they're the good ones and you really don't want to use the bad ones?
Right.
So yeah, like if you get clear on just like writing down in the kitchen example, these are the meals that we have. These are my favorite tools. It can just help to bring a little bit of clarity to that. And then, of course, just decluttering and letting go of some of the excess, asking yourself those questions. Do I really, sure, I use this and sure, it's in fine quality, but is holding on to all of these things actually making my life easier and better? Or is it making things more challenging, adding to the decision fatigue and adding to the clutter that's going on in the cabinet?
hmm Yeah, and that comes back to that self-awareness thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Coming
Really,
back to the
everything comes
awareness.
back
Yeah.
to self-awareness.
Yeah. And then how do we sabotage ourselves in our space? Because I'm guilty of that, but can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, one major way that we sabotage ourselves is by adding friction to the things that we actually want to be achieving and doing. If you're somebody who wants to be doing more yoga, but your yoga mat's buried at the bottom of like the bin of blankets, that's
Yeah.
friction. It's gonna get in the way of you being able to achieve that goal that you've set for yourself. Maybe you're hoping to move more. Well, you've just added friction to that process.
Hmm.
I think that, for tailoring your environment to be a place that's supportive for you, you want to remove as much friction as possible. Make the things that you don't want to do harder to access, and the things that you do want to do easier to access. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they don't intentionally think about the things that are causing them to have more struggle and adding friction to the processes. And then
Yeah.
another thing is um, just visual clutter. Even if it's not actual clutter, when you keep things out in your visual space constantly, those things become distractions. They become visual cues that kind of get your mind all fuzzy and unable to focus on any one given thing. So it's like you were saying, we're constantly distracted by
Yeah.
various things. We don't need more distractions. So if
Yes.
you can remove even just the visual clutter in your space,
Mhm.
then it helps to free up your mind.
It really does, doesn't it? Like we have a kitchen island and there's always stuff on it. And every time I walk in from the garage, I'm like, ugh, I want to clean it up, but then I just put it in another pile in the other corner of the kitchen, you know, and then
Yeah.
kids dump their stuff and like, how do you get on top of this? Like I think that's like I mean, go to your course. You've got a course all about this. But yeah, I mean, you're right because it does distract us and it blocks us, right? It blocks us even just from feeling that immediate space, and then we do feel distracted from what matters most of what we're trying to accomplish in our space.
Well, and I think that another, maybe mistake that people make is focusing really hard on the decluttering and not so hard on the systems. The systems are really where it's at because you can declutter for an entire week, get everything clear, and then it's all going to come back because you don't have any systems or habits in place to support that. So,
Yeah.
having systems of where are people supposed to put things when they come in the door so that they're not setting them on the dining table? Like those types of little systems in place
Mhm.
are really game changing. And when people shift their focus to that and away from just constant decluttering, I've seen that they tend to have longer lasting results.
Yes, I could totally see how we sabotage ourselves by not having the systems, but then spending weekends, decluttering, cleaning, grumbling, being resentful, and
Yeah.
also sabotaging ourselves, like you said, if we want to get in shape and feel better, like have your yoga mat or your weights out where you can see them. So I love that. Are there any other ways that we sabotage ourselves and that we can be more mindful and aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I think that one of the biggest things as far as like having miscellaneous clutter, having junk drawers and hot spots regarding the system side of things is
Mhm.
having there are two steps I would say to that type of issue. One of them is to have a better home than the one that's currently being used. And by better, I mean something that's more convenient, easier to access. If people are throwing their coats on like the dining table or dining chairs when they walk in, would a coat rack or something at the front door, just as an example, be
Yeah,
an easier solution that people are
right.
more likely to do because we like to think and operate in categories and patterns naturally as humans. Our brains like categories.
Mhm.
If you see somebody who's putting clutter in a specific spot, like a junk drawer, then everybody else is going to follow suit because
Yeah,
that has now become categorized as this is where those things go.
makes sense.
So if you can find a space that is easier and more encouraging to place and that makes sense then to your brain as being a better option, then
Mhm.
that makes things so much easier with miscellaneous clutter. And then the other tip that I have is to rehome the spot that's catching the clutter. And I did this once with a junk drawer that we had in our kitchen. I made it my washcloths drawer instead. I removed all of the it threw people
Can't
off
win
so
here,
bad for
guys.
like a week. Yeah, exactly. I removed all of this stuff and then I neatly folded and rolled up all of my washcloths. Nobody's going to go set their pins and their extra change on top of my washcloths, right? So rehoming and giving something a new purpose can also be kind of a funny game changer watching people
Yes.
come up with a new option.
So then where do you put all the junk? Because especially as kids who collect the little things and it's like so valuable to them when we know it's just junk, like those little things, like where do you keep that stuff or do you not? You probably don't.
a
I,
lot of the stuff I don't, but
yeah,
but I
I
mean,
know. I'm
there
like,
are
I already
things.
answered that question for you, but
A lot
for
of the
the rest
stuff
of
I don't.
us.
But I mean, like obviously my 2.5-year-old, she has toys. She has like little toys, little, figures or whatever. And I'm a big fan of just like having a separate container for each type of thing. So we've got like a big box that actually my Oculus VR headset came in, but it's like a perfect box with a little opening close thing. Well, all of our figures go in there now. And that gives you
Perfect.
these spatial constraints of when this box or this bin or whatever it is gets full, well, then that's a visual cue of, okay, we need to make decisions now.
Okay.
So spatial constraints can just be game changing in general. But I mean, even
Mhm.
for things that aren't kid related, like you've got batteries, loose change, stuff like that. Well, we have a big zipper bag where we put all the batteries. We have a little piggy bank thing where we put all the loose change in the house that my
Yep.
16-year-old keeps. So there, when you get intentional about, okay, well, does this thing have a home and how could I get creative and make a little home for it for the
Hmm.
specific types of things? Yeah.
Yeah. So creating the systems and giving everything a specific home,
Yeah.
not just like one junk home or
Right.
spot. That makes total sense. And then we can
Yeah.
clear up the space to feel more ease and freedom, and then really focus on what matters most. And then also set up the home to serve us, right?
Yeah.
To serve how
Exactly.
we want to feel. Oh, this is super helpful. I'm going to go to my husband tonight because also, funny enough, he's an engineer, so he likes the organization of stuff. So yeah, these are all amazing tips. Can you leave us with some, like, if someone wanted to set up their home to enforce certain habits of what's most important to them, how do they want to feel? Can you give us some advice for that, please?
Sure. I mean, again, like we've said many times, it comes down to awareness. Do not overlook the awareness. And
Yeah.
whatever way is best or easiest for you to drop into that awareness. Maybe that's meditation. Maybe that's journaling and sitting there and writing down what it is that you want to be receiving from your space every day. I'm a huge fan of being very intentional with what you want, not even from your home, but from each room in your home, because you
Hmm.
don't necessarily need the same thing from every room in your home. You may want to have an office that's inspiring and motivating and gives you energy, and a bathroom that feels more spa and zen, and helps you to relax. And when you sit and you get intentional about each of those zones and what you need from it,
Hmm.
it starts the process. It helps to kind of guide you along, and you'll start to feel like, I don't want to have clutter in this space because I really do want to have a spot that is zen and inspiring to me and that makes me feel this way. And those things are blocking that. So yeah, dipping into the awareness first, whatever path makes that the easiest for you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you have a lot of free resources on your YouTube channel, on your blog, all these freebies. Like, so you should definitely go check out her website, miadanielle.com, because you have so many freebies of the journal prompts, and I've been
Mhm.
using them, so thank you. And
Sure.
is there anything else that you want to leave our community with? This has been so helpful, Mia. Like, seriously, I think a lot of us want to be more mindful. They come to the podcast, wanting to be more intentional with their lives, wanting to feel more joy, more freedom, more possibility, to be more in alignment. So, this environment that we're creating in our physical space matters. So, is there any other things that you want to leave us with?
Well, if this is before the summit, then definitely if you're a modern mom, a mom who has kids at home essentially, then definitely go check that out. I know Audrey's going to have her link down in the description. And yeah, your space matters. So I think that a lot of times our space kind of is like the stepsister that gets pushed to the back. It's where we shove all of our junk and we don't think about it because we're focusing on other things. But if you put the intention and the time and the awareness into your space, it really can be your best asset in all of those other things you're trying to do. So I encourage anybody today to just try to drop into that and see where they
Yeah.
could better benefit.
Ah, thank you. And with all the tips and the tools that you've just shared today on the podcast, you also have a course and you have a mini course and all these freebies to help us too. But I love the idea of just starting off small, using what you use, putting it off to the side, using little areas of your space to work on first and starting with the smallest area, the easiest first. So I feel like those are really simple tools to help us get started for those who are feeling a little overwhelmed of where to start, you know?
Yeah.
And then before we close off, can you tell us a little bit about the summit experience that you've created for us?
Yes, I'm super excited about this
Me
summit because it,
too.
you know, this has been like a passion project for me. Really, it has. For me, I feel like I've been in this whole space of minimalism, clutter-free living, holistic living for a long time. And a lot of times in many events that I've been to, I really find it hard to see myself in that event. I find it hard to sometimes relate to other people who are in my industry because um, I don't know. I think that a lot of things are just not set up for modern day moms, for this generation's moms, for having smaller houses and work lives and, like all of these different things that are going on. And so that really was kind of the driving force behind me creating this program that is for this generation's moms who really want to thrive in whatever space they have available to them and reimagine what's possible. So, I mean, the summit's going to be broken down into 3 days. The first one being reimagine function, where we talk about those important systems and time management and everything that some of what Audrey and I spoke about today. Day two is all about reimagining your space, where we get into a little more of the nitty gritty for clutter and how to create that supportive space. And then day three is about reimagining possibility. And I'm probably the most excited, shouldn't be partial. I'm probably the most excited about that, though. That's actually where Audrey's going to be speaking, is in day three, reimagining possibility, because that's where we really get to kick our imagination into super gear and think beyond what we've been told, think beyond the box that we live in. So I'm super excited. Yeah, I'm very excited.
I know, and there's so many great speakers on it too each day. So I'm really excited to so honored to be part of it, but also to learn from everybody about how to declutter, yes, our physical space and declutter our mind, our emotional space to like imagine what's possible and really to step into who we want to be. And isn't
Yeah,
that what
and
like life is about, right? It's just evolving, freedom, living our most like expansive, joyful life as possible.
enjoy the experience.
Yeah. So thank
Yeah.
you so much, Mia, for being on the podcast today. Your energy is beautiful, and I know these tips are going to help. I mean, they've already helped me, so I know they're going to help our community. And just thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and being so giving of all this information and tips. Truly, you're a gift.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you and listening to you talk. You're so calming, such a nice presence.
Thanks. Come back when it's not the podcast and I've got all my kids here, you know. Well, thank you, thank you. And you guys, thanks so much for being here. Please check out miadanielle.com. Check her out on YouTube, on her podcast, the Mind Your Home podcast. And also, she has a book called Downsizing. And if you're around for March 1st through 3rd, join us at the Modern Mom Simple Home Reimagine Summit. It's going to be amazing. And I'm so excited that you're here, Mia. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here too. Have a great day. Bye.